delightful Addie Broyles. Addie is a Missouri Ozarks native, a mom of two, and the food writer for the Austin American-Statesman, where she covers everything from cookbooks, food trends, farmers markets, food entrepreneurs, and culinary culture in the Wednesday food section, basically all of my favorite things. Addie's also an award-winning writer, and her work can be found in Dwell, The Guardian, Metropolis, and a few other places. And she also writes for The Feminist Kitchen, where, oh my gosh, The Feminist Kitchen, and I think you're starting a podcast too, right, Addie?
I got all kinds of things in the works.
Yeah, what don't you do? So welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you. So honored to be here. Glad I caught some of that last session. I love what Naturally Austin does, and it's been a delight to get to know some of the folks on the panel with me. When we started talking about CPG last week, we all just lit up talking about our favorite products and why we love this space. So I'd like for Angela, Christine, and Renee to just briefly say hello, tell us a little bit about your company, and then we'll get started with some questions. Angela, do you want to get started? You're next on my screen.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And thank you for having me and for celebrating women every day. And today, celebrating that with this session. I'm the former CEO of Gaia Herbs. I've spent virtually my whole career in consumer packaged goods and mostly within plant-based and wellness. And I'm been in Austin for almost 15 years, live out in the Hill Country. And yeah, my last gig at Gaia Herbs, I was CEO and president for the last 4.5 years, and led the business through certification as a B Corp, fair living wage provider, really focused on social impact and triple bottom line metrics. So thrilled to be in the good company of some other amazing female leaders.
Angela, Renee, you're next to Angela in my box.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Yes, great to celebrate women today and every day. So my name is Renee Rouleaux, and I own Renee Rouleaux Skincare. My company is based here in Austin. I relocated my company here from Dallas almost 6 years ago. And last year, we got recognition as the best place to work by the Austin Business Journal, which was super exciting. This August celebrates 25 years of my company. I started out, by trade, I'm an esthetician, celebrity esthetician, so giving skin treatments. But then shortly after I started my business, I started with a few skincare spas up in Dallas. And then I started a product line, and fast forward 25 years, we are now 100% e-commerce, selling direct to consumer, not in any retail stores, which has been a very strategic decision. If you can believe it, I started e-commerce in 1999. It was the Stone Age, but been in that space for a really long time. I have a team of 19 here in Austin. We have 10,000 square feet of warehouse and office space, and I own 100% of my company. I've never taken any outside investment. That's a very strategic decision for me. I say no, no, no all day long. I cover my ears. I don't even want to hear it. I want to just stay in control, and that's my path. So great to be here.
Thanks, Renee. Christine?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is such a pleasure, and happy Women's Day. It is amazing, really. 1975 is when the United Nations, claimed this day, and just imagine over the last couple of decades, where we've come. Women definitely have a seat at the table, and it's just so nice to be able to see all of you around this virtual table. I am actually new to Austin, although I did my undergraduate here. I'm a Longhorn, but it's probably been over 30 years that I've been in Austin. I've had just a wonderful career in CPG. I've done most every function, and I've also lived overseas for probably about 13, 14 years. So I've had global, regional, local roles with major CPG companies. And this is actually my first foray into a startup. So I'm currently the CEO of Gathered Foods, and our consumer brand is Good Catch. And we are a chef-driven, innovation kind of inspired and focused 100% plant-based seafood protein. And so it is really kind of writing a new page in the playbook, because there are the Beyond brand, Beyond Meats, and there's the Impossible Foods, but not many people dabbling in plant-based seafood. So it is fun to be able to, make a difference, and also, create a legacy for what I call the blue heart of the earth, right? So the living oceans. So so pleased to be here, and also joining Angela and Renee and you, Addie. So I'm excited.
Love that. Well, all of you touched on some really important parts that I'd like to discuss during this session about ownership, purpose-driven corporations, being willing to evolve and change and maybe leave certain projects and pick up other projects. But let's start foundationally at CPG. Christine, when you were talking about Good Catch and having a plant-based seafood product, the little neurons in my brain are like, ooh, at the grocery store, I could go get this product and bring it into my house and cook it for my kids, and we can have something different at the dinner table. So I get to experience CPG as a consumer. You all make these products, share them with the world. So I can tell you why I think CPG is exciting, but I want to hear from our CEOs here about what drew you to this particular space. And especially when you think about the economy at large, like CPG is still a special part of it. And so I want to hear in your words why you think that is.
Well, I can share actually. My background, I never thought I would be in CPG, and I started in school as an opera singer, which was a far cry from where I've ended up. But I became really interested in biology. I actually was pre-med, and I veered into retail first and working in a health food store. And it was there that I was introduced to the world of natural products and just the power that these products had. You put a product in someone's hand, they went home with it. And in some cases, they came back and said, that thing that you recommended to me or whatever you gave me, that took care of me in this way. And it was so powerful as a young woman. So I ended up going into the natural products industry, veered through retail, and then went on to a brand. And that brand wasn't for me connected in a way that gave me enough of the roots of where the origin of the product came from. So when I was at Gaia, we grew a lot of those plants ourselves that went into the medicine that we made. And just the power of connecting the origin of something to, this is going to end up in someone's home. This plant is growing in a field somewhere. It's going to end up in someone's home, in their cabinet. They're going to take it at a moment when they're hopeful, like this is going to help me. I mean, products that do that, whether it's skincare or body care, that, people are trusting themselves to make a difference in their life, or food, it's just so powerful. I think that hope that products bring people is a pretty amazing thing to be part of.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in here. I mean, I totally agree with Angela. I mean, I actually also started pre-med. We might've been in school together, and then kind of decided to go off in different directions. But, in the end, it is really about the fact that we are all consumers. And what I find to be incredibly fascinating is that we all kind of, throughout our daily lives, kind of go about our habits and practices, right? And then we have these, what I would call these problems, right? And whatever problem it is, we're hoping that there's going to be a product that can meet this unmet need, right? And then continue to sustain and surprise and delight us. So, once the problem is solved, then the challenge is that how can you continue to experience us in meaningful ways? I used to always joke that the absolute gift for a CPGer is to watch a consumer, look at that, have that aha moment. It's like, wow, I can't believe they thought of this. They don't know who the they is, but it's like, I can't believe that they thought of this. And okay, I'm going to age myself here, but do you all remember when you used to go to school when you were really young? Maybe some of you don't remember, but you had these sandwiches that your mom would put into the sandwich bag, and you had to flip the top over, right? Oh, Addie, you remember, I see your head nodding. And it was just such a messy situation, right? Especially when the bread would slide all over the place. But then Ziploc came, and then you had this one, and you hear it snap when it closed. And you would just talk to consumers and like, oh my gosh, that is so great. And so it's those kinds of meaningful differences that you can make in a consumer's life. That's really relevant in terms of whatever problem they're trying to solve. For me, that's the beauty of being a consumer good.
What do you think about all this, Renee?
Yeah, so I have some fun little stories. So I think my entry into the world of retail certainly is comes from my family. So my fun fact, my dad was the number 17th employee of Target Corporation. So I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota, and Target, that's where they started with Dayton Hudson. Anyway, so he worked for Target for quite a few years, but later he retired with Michael's Arts and Crafts. He was their CEO and took them from 400 stores to 1,300 stores. And so anyway, so I've always, been on the retail side for my dad, and he also ran our household really tight as well. Like it was always about inventory. So like our food cabinet, he had like inventory checks lists. He would teach my mom how to do an inventory count. So when she went grocery shopping, she knew exactly what to get. So I had that influence on with my dad. And then on my mom's side of the family, my grandmother was a hairstylist and she had a hair salon. And so I was influenced by her, helping others, make them look good, feel good, that sort of thing. I think for me, being an esthetician and working hands-on with skin, you only see, I only see a client for, 75 minutes or so, but the goal is to have them keep up the results at home. And so certainly having a product line where people aren't having to come see me all the time. And certainly in the case with the pandemic, people are relying on their skincare products more than ever. So anyway, it's just, it's in my blood, my DNA, and it just feels really natural for me to be in this space.
It's interesting to hear that perspective of somebody who was surrounded by the retail, frame of mind for so long, and then to go to a product that is not in stores, which I want to find out more about the 100% e-commerce. But you touched on the pandemic, which is, obviously not an elephant in the room. It's just the room, it feels like. And, we're all here gathered today from different places, different parts, different homes and situations. And there's an intimacy to this, even though it's removed and we don't get to give each other hugs and network in a traditional way. But CPG has been hugely important this year. And we're also seeing, in my space, restaurants trying to figure out how they can get into the CPG space because their restaurants are closed, or, concert promoters, everybody's looking at CPG. And so can you talk a little bit about what the past year has been like running your companies in this new era?
I can start. So for us, we actually had our best year ever in 2020. I really manage our growth. I'm not looking to take over the world, not looking to be acquired, not looking to be, a household name. So we are super happy with like 15% growth every year. But last year in 2020, we had 42% growth. And I mean, I'm happy about it. I'm not going to complain, but it was like, whoa, but sometimes that just happens. So for us, with the pandemic, what happened was, one, people are home and they're not wearing as much makeup. And so now all of a sudden they're looking at their skin a little differently. They're like, all right, I need to kind of address what's going on underneath here, because normally I'm, covering it up with makeup. So people were taking their skincare more seriously in that way and kind of getting down to business with clearing their skin. Secondly, people had more time on their hands. And we also know that, beauty is very much tied in with, looking good, feeling good, and something like washing your face, doing an at-home skin peel, a mask, something like that. It's very much about self-care, and people are wanting to feel better. And so beauty really thrived in 2020 because of that. And then for us, also a big thing that happened, and it's still happening, but people are getting what's called maskne, which is like acne from wearing masks. So we have a lot of products. I have 50 products in my skincare line based on 9 different skin types, but we do a lot with adult acne. So people were really seeking solutions for that. So some of our adult acne products just absolutely, just really sold like crazy. And now people are, and then us not being in retailers and being, strictly online, it made people, everyone was going online, and have a very popular skincare blog that really got a lot more eyeballs in 2020 because people had more time on their hands to absorb content and learn about their skin. And so, overall, the pandemic has really worked in our favor. It was kind of the perfect storm in so many ways.
I mean, for Gathered Foods, look, I'm going to be realistic with everyone. It was a very challenging year. There were a lot of headwinds that were out there, particularly for our startup. Our first line was just launched in February of 2019, and that was just a shelf-stable line. And in 2020, we were trying to start up a new plant facility. It was a greenfield facility. We also launched our frozen classic line, and we were growing. But you had all types of challenges. Resilience would be something that I would say underscore, but also creative resourcefulness. I mean, I look back and I think about 2020 and yes, absolutely, it was really tough. But I would also have to say that it tests your resolve to be, to complete the play. Right. You have to keep going. And in 2020, I am so amazingly proud and grateful for the team and the family that we have that we worked with. I'll give you a couple of examples. We started up a greenfield manufacturing site in Heath, Ohio. And our innovation team, our R&D team, actually sits in Vancouver. And you might recall, because it's still there, there's a border control. And so all of our innovation and technical services team could not actually even travel to the plant facility to help the startup get up. So they were getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. The operators in Heath wore the virtual glasses, and that's how we started up the plant. So the operators in the Heath facility wore these Google glasses, basically, and our technical team could adjust the knobs basically from Vancouver. And of course, it was tremendous teamwork. Over communication was absolutely key. And while we were doing that, we also launched our frozen new products. And that was also during the height of the pandemic, and we still grew doors. Now, what happened? Well, one of the things I really want everyone to understand is, I know there are a lot of founders here, is you have strategy. Stick with your strategy. You created the strategy for a reason. Stick to it. But there are going to be extenuating circumstances where you have to manage your tactics, right? So, and it's okay. I mean, you have to roll with whatever the circumstances are out there. I mean, for our product, it was really important that we have and can create the right experience for the consumer. And what we would prefer to do is just start in food service, because there we can curate that experience. But unfortunately, with most of the, Addie, you talked about that at the beginning of the session, that a lot of the food service establishments were not able to open. So we had to actually do a pivot. Where else can we have that experience created? And that's where we started at retail. So yes, retail was always part of our plan, but we had to accelerate that part of the plan. We had to be flexible, we had to be nimble, because in the end, it was about how do we create opportunities for consumers to experience us, and food service wasn't available. And now, as things are starting to open up, we're now kind of trying to shift the pieces of the pie to get more space in the food service end. But it's about resilience, 2020.
Yeah. Angela, I'm so glad you unmuted, because I was going to ask you about mobilizing intimacy and the purpose-driven nature of your company. You already knew what you were going to say, I'm sure already, but
yeah. I mean, that I will say 2020 definitely crystallized a lot of things for each one of the speakers, as well as all of you as attendees. I mean, you guys all learn things about yourselves and your business and your consumer and your strategy. And I appreciate Christine's word of resilience. I mean, certainly there's no better way to test your resolve as founders, as leaders, than going through what we've been through in the last 12 months. I do think purpose is a critical aspect of that. And, strategy ultimately is born of purpose. If you are going to know what you're trying to achieve and what success looks like, you have to first start with, why am I doing this? Why is it meaningful? Who is it meaningful to? For me, leading a purpose-driven business, Gaia was not a startup. We were 33, now 34 years old. And in many ways, though, that purpose had never been called forward, had never been distilled in a way that it was so clear that here's why we exist and here's what we're all working in service of. So I think as founders, one of the best gifts you can give yourself and your team is to really get clear about that purpose. And help people understand what they're part of. They're part of, yes, creating a product and launching a dream. They're also part of your what you're bringing to life. And if you're bringing something to life that you believe in so deeply, then help them buy into that too, by really centering it on the purpose of what you started. Simon Sinek wrote a great book, Start With Why. Many of you've probably read it, and it's a great reminder. And he talks about, like, look, just start there, because everything else flows from that, and your strategy and your tactics and all of that comes. So 2020 for me was a great reminder of, like, wow, if we had that strong purpose already in place, it allowed us to respond. And responding really was first about ensuring continuity of community, continuity of supply chain, continuity of operations. Then after that, and that's 6 to 9 month process, you can move on to recover. And you're going to move back and forth between those thresholds as leaders, the responding. And I know supply chain is a massive problem now, different parts of the supply chain, but yeah, definitely starting there, Addie, to your question, really helped, I think, from a people perspective, and it also helped from a recruiting perspective. I found that being able to recruit and hire executive leaders on my team was so much easier, because we were clear about what we were doing in the world. Also for us, because we were a B Corp, that was really meaningful.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned start with why, because when you start with the why, then eventually you can get to the who and the how. And a lot of the how has changed because we're meeting virtually. And I'd love to hear how the how changing is reshaping maybe your whole workplace culture or the people you're able to hire.
Yeah, I'm sure Renee, Christine probably have examples of that too, but for us, we found that, and there was a question that came up in the comments, how often did you share that why with your team, and in which ways did you find were most successful to communicate those values? For me, I communicated the purpose, the why, in every all hands meeting we had. And it wasn't like I spent 15 minutes on it, it was just there. And it was there so that it became reflexive for everyone. So once that became reflexive, which I think took probably 6 months, and people just knew, here's why this is our purpose, this is our mission, synonymous with mission. Then we began to realize that the organizational values that we built are, what does it mean to be a leader at this company, weren't quite, they needed to be refreshed. So one of the ways that I found as a leader, to engage and to culturally build, that was so critical, was to make sure that the values were, I would say, half, here's how we do things around here, and half aspirational, here's who we're growing into. Behavioral values that your team, you want them to model. This is what we hire for. This is what we promote for. This is what we fire for. You don't do these things, it's probably not a good fit. So that gets into the how, Addie.
Renee, you were shaking your head. It sounded like what something Angela said was really resonating with you.
Yeah, I think, I know I loved everything that you said. I think, so the concept of company core values. So you'll walk into like a tire shop or something, and on the wall, they'll have their core values, and you kind of just like, whatever, you kind of look at it. I always just kind of roll my eyes, and I'm like, oh, it's just there for show, right? And I, 8 years ago, if anyone is familiar with EOS, it's based on an entrepreneurial operating system. It's based on a book called Traction. So if anyone wants to really get a healthy organization, check out that book, Traction. But we run our company on this process. And the first thing when we jumped in this program 8 years ago was doing core values. And what I didn't realize about core values was they're a decision-making tool. They really are a decision-making tool. So, all the things that Angela said, we hire by them, fire by them, that sort of thing, make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction in the boat. And I, when we're in our leadership meetings and we're having, someone says, oh, we need to take a left. Someone says we need to take a right. We always go back to our core values, and the answer is right there. And so I definitely think that people should really look at core values as a guiding light, a Northern Star, a decision-making tool, because that's what they've been for our company in every aspect of our company. I also do them. I also have my own personal core values as well. And that also is a decision-making tool for things in my life. So yeah, just a big fan of making sure you know who you are, what you stand for, and kind of your true DNA. So you're always kind of staying true to yourself.
Christine, I don't remember if you were the one who was just talking about this when you work with your team. I keep getting back to this, like we are all much more, like our humanness is much more apparent because of what has been going on this year. And how do you lead from that place, and how has that benefited your team?
Well, I think that when you work in a virtual environment, it can absolutely work. I mean, I would say maybe a year ago, people would say, oh, can you really, exist through kind of this virtual environment? I was actually hired through Zoom. I didn't actually meet the executive chairman until 2-3 months after I was hired. I still have not met my entire team yet in person. However, I feel like even through the Zoom meetings that we do have, we've been invited to people's homes. Right. I mean, actually, I see many of you who are on screen. I'm in your house and you're in my house, and you find some of these extra, maybe human qualities. And I know that even Katrina, you had mentioned, maybe my dog is going to come in a few minutes. We're all human, right? I mean, and we accept that. And I think that we're able to see that human side that you don't necessarily see when you're walking in, maybe with a suit and your heels when you go into like an executive meeting. I mean, we can be more real with each other, but I think that it also requires us to be more accepting of each other. But when you are in a virtual organization, though, it also can work because you have to make it work. You do have to have that extra effort to communicate or even over communicate. And I think that is immensely important. I've had the privilege to lead companies in companies with teams around the world. And, the sun never set, right? Because it was all over the world, but you had to be cognizant of where people were, and you meet them where they're at, because that's really the only way is that you've got to be able to reach out your hand and have them grab it. And that's just a fundamental human respect, I think, and that's how you make it work.
So, we're building trust in every interaction that we have. It also means you don't ever leave the office. So I'd like to segue into some challenges of the year of, balancing, the work-life balance that will come up in almost every panel, I'm sure, today. How do we lead authentically with this vulnerability? What a great time to be a woman in this industry, and a woman in any industry, because we are talking about boundaries. We are talking about the need to build trust with our team. But it also means that for me, it feels like I'm working all the time, feels like Zooms are nonstop, feel like my eyesight is I'm losing some eyesight this year. How are you overcoming that? How are you managing these different needs in this new environment? Because let's be honest, it's not really going to change. A year from now, we will still be having conferences in this way. So what are some of the strategies you've had to implement this year in terms of maybe PTO, self-care strategies, support for your employees?
Yeah, I think as women and as leaders, this is one of our superpowers, both our empathy and our vulnerability. So, that's a double-edged sword. So either that empathy and that vulnerability, if we lean into it, can make us really effective as leaders in relating to our teams, or it can lead us to feel too much, to feel like we have to be too much, and that leads to burnout. And we're definitely seeing both versions of that. I mean, more women are dropping out of the workforce than ever before, and that's heartbreaking. So I think as leaders of our organizations, we have to show up with empathy and be relatable. Like, my husband and I have 4 kids, and, they, some days they're in school, some days, right now, right before this, I was down there trying to help with long division. So, we do the best we can. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's difficult. Like, there were many instances last year where I was leading an all staff meeting, and, a child came into the picture, and we had 300 employees, and a lot of those employees were mothers and parents, and showing up as a complex, messy, sometimes imperfect human as a leader is a really important way to be. And I think one of the silver linings of this time has been being able to show people that, first of all, there really is no such thing as balance. You're going to constantly be in a state of not quite achieving equilibrium. It's just, the question is like, can you embrace that imperfection? Can you set some boundaries? And I'm sure Christine, Renee, you guys have had your own versions of that. So I wouldn't say that I had any unlocks that were epiphanies for me. I just learned, like, I need to do things. I need to go out in the garden. I need to go take a run. And that's different for all of us. But most of all, I needed to model as a CEO empathy and understanding and humanity, just being a human.
Maybe Angela, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that if I look back over the last 30 years of my own career, I've worked almost every work permutation known to man, full-time, part-time, virtual, in the office, everything. And, early on in my career as a female, you didn't talk about your kids. You also didn't talk about the fact that you might want to steal away to go watch their play because it was during the day, right? And you just were quiet about that. You just kind of snuck out, and then you came back and you didn't say anything about it, right? All the way until now. Angela, you just gave that example of having a town hall with, maybe your kids coming in. And, I also used to remember being in the office like that. And then I actually had a work from home situation where I had the doors, like the French doors with the glass, and the kids would come home from school and they would wave. And so you're doing, the wave, and then they want to ask you a question. So they want to open the door and you go, no. The wave becomes no. And then they want to say more, but you're in the meeting and the hand becomes no, go away. So it's here to no, to go away, and it's all hand movements, right? And then I have my favorite stories from my daughter, very resourceful. She decided to write the question down and she put it up on the glass door. And now what can you do? You actually have to, excuse me for a moment, and then you have to go take care of it. But it is so amazing now for us to have, I think, Angela, you used the word empathy. Just a few days ago, last week, actually, I was on a call with one of our junior employees, and it was like a skip level call. And so we were talking, but her sitter on that day had called in and wasn't able to go. And so she had her 3-year-old and her 1-year-old at home, and you could hear them yelling. And this completely flabbergasted this young lady, and they were yelling, and she was saying to the kids, the CEO's on the phone, the CEO's on the phone, you need to be quiet. And I was telling her, I said, it's okay, I've been there, it's fine. And I don't think your 3-year-old is going to know who a CEO is. So, but it is about having empathy, it's about being human, but it's also about listening. Because, in order for you to be successful and all of us to come out of this healthy is to be able to listen. And I guess the only other thing for me is kind of structure your day. Make sure that you have your own time for yourself. The morning is my time. So if I can grab 30 minutes or an hour before I start my day, that's when I'll, run or do some exercise or just do something to let out any kind of pent up energy. So then I can be there for everyone else. So be there for yourself, steal some time, and then you can be there for everyone else for the rest of the day.
Did you have anything to add to that, Renee?
Yeah, all great stuff. I think as a woman founder, we're mama bear to everybody, right? And the people rely on us a lot. I think certainly as my company's gotten bigger, I'm not managing employees anymore. So I have managers that do that. But at the end of the day, they want to know I care. And so I'm about to, this next 2 weeks, I'm about to do one-on-ones with everyone on my team with no agenda. It's not here to talk about how's your manager, how's your work life at Renee Rouleaux. It's just simply, how are you? And whatever the conversation is, it's whatever it is. But I just think people, I know for me, everyone always feels like they're bugging me and Renee, you're so busy and I don't want to bother you and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing that's more important to me than being there for my team and them calling me and me being supportive in whatever way that is. That's also the nice thing of being 100% owner of the company. I can still have all those really good touch points, and our company is only 19 people, so it's not hard to do, but just, showing people I care, that's the best thing I can do.
Yeah. Sounds like knowing how much is in your tank,
Mm-hmm.
having to show up and have all these conversations with people, to have that level of empathy and compassion, you can't give it if you don't have it. And I think that just takes a really high level of self-knowledge that I know is something that everybody, I'm looking at all these boxes and thinking about all the self-care that goes into every single person's day, just so that they can then lead an office and create a workplace culture where people want to stay and where people can feel mentored. That was kind of one thing I wanted to talk to you about. Angela mentioned the number of women who've dropped out of the workplace, of the workforce just in the past year. How do you create a structure, a ladder, whatever metaphor you want to describe, for young women in your companies to feel like they can either rise into management positions within your companies or maybe even start their own?
Yeah, maybe I can share one of I think the most lasting pieces of mentor advice that I've received personally in my own life. My very first boss out of university, I was only with for 6 months, because he was transferred, to a different division, and he went away. But we kept in touch, and we still keep in touch to this day. And I remember talking to him. I think it was maybe about 15, 20 years ago, and I was telling him about the fact that I had this mommy guilt, right? So I'm a young manager. I have 3 children, and I told him, I said, I feel guilty. And, one of the things that he said to me, he said, Christine, he said, no matter what you do, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're working, your kids are watching you. They're watching you, how you manage your stress. They're watching you, how you treat other people. They're just watching you. So no matter what it is that you're doing, make sure that you're giving it your all, and it is surrounded and supported by purpose. And your kids will take that away and it'll be a part of them because they're watching you as a role model. So I encourage women that are in my organization is that let's be realistic about what you can and cannot do. Also be realistic to yourself on what you will or will not do. You can draw your own line, and then you can see whether or not it's commensurate, with the culture of the workplace that you're in. But in the end, it is about making sure that you're fulfilling your own purpose. And then when you can fulfill your own purpose, it's very, very likely that you're going to give above and beyond and where you're working. But you've got to be able to grow both professionally and personally in order for you to thrive.
How much time do we have left in our panel? Because I was
You
going
can
to
go.
start.
You can go up to 12:55.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We have a great question that I want to get to in a second. Did Renee or Angela want to make a comment on sort of mentoring sort of young workers in your companies and helping them feel empowered?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel like they're learning and growing and moving forward in their career. We have one of our core values is learn and grow, and we allocate funds to each of our employees to allow them to put it towards a learning opportunity. So whether it's something for the career or personal life, we one of our employees wanted to learn how to sew, and so we paid for her to take a sewing class, and super fun. So, but yeah, I think just a culture of support in growth, and wherever that leads, wherever that leads to. I think one of the big things is I'm also somebody that if somebody has a desire to go leave and work for another company or start their own company, I mean, I'll never fault anyone for that. I mean, we don't own our employees, right? It's a privilege for them to give their time to us and contribute to our company. And so I've certainly, being in business for 25 years, I've had lots of people leave to go do other things, and always just wanting to support them and I would never fault anyone for wanting to grow because that's what I do. I mean, I left a place at some point and started my own. So just being supportive of people's goals and dreams, and also just know that karma is a good thing. I mean, karma is something. And so I never like to burn bridges. I'm always just trying to lead from the heart. And I consider that a big part of my success and why I can be in business for 25 years and get the recognition as best place to work. I mean, that speaks volumes. So that's what I have to say.
I think what I would add, and I totally agree with Renee and Christine, as women, we have the gift of intuition, and that isn't necessarily gender specific. I mean, there are many men who have that, but I think women are wired in a way that there is a knowing often. And so one of the ways I found to support women, whether it was within my org chart or just in my constellation, was to encourage women to really trust that inner voice and that intuition and not discount it. I think we're, in the world of KPIs and P&Ls and all these finite measures, we're sometimes not as quick to trust that sense of knowing. And that can be really powerful when you start to lean into that. So encouraging women to trust that voice, and also understanding the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, because both are really important. Mentorship is, someone saying, hey, will you help me in this specific way? Sponsorship is maybe somebody hasn't asked for help, but maybe you're just there to lift them up and to put them in the right place, because they don't need help, they just need to be seen. So helping women be seen is a big part of that too. And as women, I think that's a big part of what we can do for other women, even if, they know more than I do, but for whatever reason, they're not being seen here. So let me help them. And that's something we can all do.
Angela told this great story about her parents really asked her to choose to lead with her head or her heart. And she's like, I don't want to choose. You're really embodying that with that answer and the way you lead your companies. Okay, we have a couple of great questions. Maria had asked, how would you say being the CEO of a company you founded is different than being hired to be the CEO? And then for the founder, how do you realize at some point you have to step down and let somebody else lead? Who wants to take that one?
I could start with that. Yeah, that's a that's a really great question. For me as the founder, realizing, at what point do I step down? So there is I guess it's a book, but you can also Google and see it from like Harvard Business Review has it online, but it's by Noah Wasserman. Is anyone familiar with, it's called The Founder's Dilemma. And so Google it, you'll find it, but it's called The Founder's Dilemma. I guess it's based on a book, but basically this guy did this research, and what he came up with is you need to decide if you want to be rich or you want to be king. And king meaning in control and in charge, or rich meaning you might be owned by someone else, but you got a ton of money, because you were acquired or, gave away part of your company, et cetera. And I think that's a really good thing for people to learn, especially, or to read about as they're starting out, because every decision you make has a consequence, good, bad, or indifferent. And you need to be really clear on your path. So for example, can we do links in chat? I think we can, right? Okay, so I'm going to share also, I was interviewed by Inc.com, and when an opportunity comes my way, there's 13 questions that I ask myself before I ever say yes to anything. And anyway, so super strategic. I'll share that link. But yeah, so I think, for me, I want to be king, or we'll call it queen. And but I just love having control. I like being in the driver's seat of my company. The whole reason why I became an entrepreneur is because I didn't want to work for someone else and have someone else tell me what to do, right? And so then all of a sudden, if I give away a piece of my company or whatever, then I lose that control, and that doesn't interest me. And so I still am in the CEO role, but I rely heavily on my work husband, who is my COO, and we're a great team. And I certainly don't do all roles. We say in our company, what are your ones and fives? And what this means is you write down everything you do for your company, all the things you do day to day, week to week, week to week. And then you rank them. 5 is I love doing this. I could do it all day long, whatever. 4 is like, yeah, it's good. I can do it. It's fine. 3 is like, I don't really love it. 2, et cetera. 1 is good riddance. If I never had to do it again, I'd be happy. And so the goal for my leadership team, they're always wanting me to do 5. So in my CEO role, I delegate the 4s, the 3s, the 2s, and the 1s. And so I can be a good CEO when I'm doing the things that I'm inherently wired for, I love, and get me like super excited. So I think certainly, wearing all the hats that we do, it makes it challenging to only be doing 5s, but that should always be the goal. And that's, even when we're in meetings, sometimes we'll talk about something and, okay, well, what are the next steps? And I'll go, oh, well, I'll do that. And they'll go, Renee, is it a 5 for you? And I'm like, nah. They're like, nope, we're not going to have you do it. So having a supportive team that makes sure that I really stay in my wheelhouse has been a great practice for us.
That's so awesome. Okay, we got quite a few questions, so I'm going to try to. There was a great question about the dynamic between the founder, maybe an established founder and a new CEO, and maybe at offline, you guys could connect about that to get that answer. Amanda said, what are some unique or creative ways that you've created company culture and ethos and reinforced the why of your team? We kind of touched on that. I want to go to this one from Lisa about when you were building your companies, who were your first full-time hires and why? Which kind of relates to Brittany's question. At what point did you decide to go, make that leap to go full time? I know that's a lot of questions. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I having not been a founder, I haven't sat in the seat that Renee is in, but I was hired by a founder, and I'm currently in this period of intentional pausing where I'm talking to a lot of founders. And, some of them are mid-stage, like over 15 million in revenue. Some of them are very early stage. But, many of them have been wrestling with the same question. And it's a really good question, right? I mean, there's some very tactical ways to answer it, like, okay, what's your funding like? What's your cash situation? Can you fund your inventory? I mean, these are practical answers. I think one consistent thing I've heard from founders as they're evaluating this is what do they, to Renee's point, what are they not great at and what don't they love? And then making sure that that's the first thing. Like a founder I just talked to late last week was, really struggling with marketing. And she knows that she has a great product. She knows that she has a sweet spot. She has proof of concept. She's getting success where she's, where she is, but she needs to expand that and she has to hire someone for marketing. But for her, she knows she can't do that because she needs to raise a seed round and she needs capital in order to do that. So I think, acknowledging, okay, what is my strategy? What am I trying to accomplish? Who do I need in order to help me achieve that or unlock that success commercially? And do I have the funding for it? We're all sort of tied up together. Yeah, but there's many ways to look at that I think is part pragmatic and part also knowing yourself.
I was just going to say, knowing what you want to do. And Renee, that 1 in 5 thing was really great. Christine, what thoughts do you have on hiring and expanding and, knowing when to say, actually, we're going to go get more money so that we can pay this person because we really need them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, of course, when you're building a business, there's no more important asset that you can have, of course, aside from the product or the CPG product that you're actually, going to be putting out into the market, is your people, right? But you also want to make sure that, and have to be realistic, quite honestly, in the DNA of the people that you're trying to hire. Absolutely. I think base plus incentive pay are very important. Also, I think that people coming into your organization are going to be looking at types of equity that they have. And I'm talking about the executive leadership team, right? And I think that there's going to be a time and a place on how you pace those hires, right? So, what are the first hires that you want to make? Well, first of all, as the CEO, what are your strengths and where do you need to have those skill sets complemented, right? So if you're a marketer, you might need a salesperson. If you need to have more technical expertise, maybe you need to bring in more, technical, or innovation support. There are ways, and there are other services out there that you can hire fractional, like a fractional CFO, until you need to have somebody that's more full-time. And in fact, that's what we have ironclad solutions that is helping me out from a finance standpoint. And at some point, I will go hire a CFO, but right now the marriage is beautiful between us and the fractional CFO that we do have, although he is almost basically full-time with us. You have to recognize also, and I think that Renee and Angela talked a little bit about earlier, is the symbiotic relationship between a founder and a CEO that's been brought in. Right. And how you decide that you work together. And that actually has to be a very frank discussion. Even when I was hired, the board just actually asked us to take a personality test to see whether or not we could actually work with each other. And it's worked beautifully for us because we talked about it beforehand. The way he likes to talk, he's a dreamer, he's a visionary. He's truly committed to making change. But he is an impact investor. That is his history. He's been doing that for over 20 years. But he says, Christine, I speak before I think, right? And me being a practice CPG, multinational, company trained, I think before I speak, right? And so we recognize that about each other, but together we try to leverage that as a strength. Right. So I think it's important that you have that expectation between the two of you, and then you agree moving forward, what is the order of entry in terms of the skill sets that you need to bring into the company. Not every company is going to be the same. So you really have to look at it. So there's not like this one wand that you can say we should do it exactly this way. You really have to evaluate what you have within the company first.
Women are so well suited for looking at a room, figuring out who's going to work well together, who's not going to work well together, and adjusting those knobs that you talked about with the Google. A great parting question from Carly. What's the best way for us to reach out to the panel? How do you like to, in some ways, get cold calls with questions from other folks? Social media, you like it when they find your email address? Renee says, DM me on Instagram.
Email.
I think I saw LinkedIn being dropped in the chat after the last. So LinkedIn is great for me.
Great. This has been such a pleasure chatting with you. I know we could go on for probably another hour, but thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Addie. And thank you for having us today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And Renee, I feel like I need to refresh my skincare routine after hearing you talk. So thanks for sharing those little bits about what you founded as well. It was fun to connect with all of you.
Thanks. Sign up, look at my blog. That's all my free advice. You don't have to buy any product, but if you want to learn about skin, I've had a blog since 2005. I have well over 1,000 blog posts. So sign up for our emails, but you will become super smart and have a game plan for how to best care for your unique skin type.
Beautiful.
Anyway, keep up the great work, everyone. Really proud of all of you. And it was an honor to be here today.